I was living in Cairo, but after my husband died, I couldn't live there anymore, neither me or my children. We were forced to leave my home, and I escaped out here to the countryside.
My husband abandoned me because I only gave birth to daughters. He's not giving me anything. And this project is providing me with the income to feed myself, my mother, and my 3 girls.
My husband died 7 years ago, leaving me with 7 kids.
When my husband died, I was 28 years old. I'm now 39. After his long illness, he left me with 3 little children and a lot of debt.
After my husband died, I learned that he didn't have insurance, and of course, I didn't have pension either.
I had to start a project to earn an income to support my family.
My father-in-law is married to 4, so his newest wife refused to let him give us our inheritance.
My in-laws didn't give me a penny. They don't even have a penny to give me.
I never inherited. I benefited with nothing. I received nothing.
I went to the Amal field officer to ask for help. She told me about Global Fund for Widows Amal project and how they are supporting female heads of households so that I could start a business.
I found out the Global Fund for Widows Amal project provides funding for widows to start projects, so I went to them.
I took a loan from the Global Fund for Widows Amal project and started a project.
I started a chicken farm. I buy young chickens and fatten them and then sell them.
I started a grocery, selling chips, oil, sugar, rice, a nice size store.
I opened a store to sell clothing and household goods and to prepare brides for weddings. I started this project because no one else in this village has a store like this.
I needed money to start the project. I have a degree in fashion design, and I wanted to start the business to design, sew, and sell clothing.
I selected this project because no one else in this village is doing it. I actually am the only one selling chickens in this area, and the people here love me. I am able to live amongst them. This is the only source of income my children and I have.
I'm so happy with this project. It's beautiful and profitable and is allowing me to support and feed my family. I want to grow it.
My dream is to send my daughters to college. And I never want what happened to me to happen to my daughters. I did not abandon my girls, even though I had nothing. I stood with them and will always stay with them until the end.
I realized that this is a good business and is supporting me and the children well. I don't need to ask anyone for help.
I put all the challenges aside and put my children in front of me. I want for them a future. I want them to be something great, just like their father had dreamt and just like they want. I am able to provide for them. If they need tutors, I get them. If they need clothing, I get it for them.
I would advise every widow to access capital with Global Fund for Widows and to launch a project to support her children.
Thank God, I am hopeful that I will continue to grow with Global Fund for Widows Amal project. I wanted to reach loan size of 250,000 to 1 million pounds because I want to buy a few sewing machines and have a small factory.
I advise every widow to rely on herself. She must work and never rely on anyone else.
Welcome to the 13th annual Fundraising Gala of the Global Fund for Widows. I'm Kinnari Gandhi, board member and master of ceremonies for this evening. I want to express our gratitude to our distinguished guests of honor, our incredibly generous corporate sponsors, and dedicated patrons whose donations and support cannot be overstated during these extraordinary times. We understand the sacrifices made by all of you throughout the COVID pandemic, and we are so grateful for your continued support. Global Fund for Widows was founded 12 years ago by Heather Abraham Leathers. Her life of world travel and escape from wars exposed her to the suffering of so many widows. The global pandemic, which all of you have experienced, has taught us how precious life is, how fortunate we are to have healthcare, government programs, benefits, support, and resources after losing someone. For our widows across the world, the pandemic has only added to an already difficult life. They continue to be prevented from inheriting what is rightfully theirs: marital property, personal property, even their own children, in particular those that have sons. They're considered property and forcibly inherited themselves to their husband's next of kin. They are considered a burden and a curse. They are often evicted from their marital home, left without food, shelter, or access to basic needs. And they are subjected to harmful traditions, practices, including violent burial rites and unspeakable sexual violence, all with the intention of cleansing the widows of the sin of their husband's death. I often think how lucky I am to have this life. I met my husband, the nicest, most intelligent, kindest human I'd ever met, crossing the street on a picturesque, snowy New York City night in 2013. Fast forward 2 years, we were happily married, a baby boy on the way, and life seemed like a fairy tale. Until it wasn't. Tonight, we invite you to hear the inspiring stories of perseverance and resilience from widows who have been touched by Global Fund for Widows. If you are inspired, we invite you to make a contribution to the Global Fund for Widows by texting WIDOWS21 to 76278, clicking on the call for contributions, or scanning the QR code on your screen. Our goal is to raise $100,000 to empower an additional 1,000 widows around the world. Before honoring our esteemed guests this evening, we would like to share the progress we have made in 2021. And for that, I would like to introduce our founder, Heather Ibrahim Leathers.
Thank you, Kinnery, for your gracious welcome. Good evening, friends and patrons, and thank you for joining us tonight, from as far away as India and Geneva to as close as New York and Chicago. We have so many milestones this evening to celebrate with you. As the global pandemic continues its rage around the world, Global Fund for Widows extended its emergency response efforts, serving some 6.5 million meals and establishing over 400 sustainable poultry farms for widows and their children across India, Kenya, and the Cameroon. COVID did not deter us from our core mission of economically empowering widows. Our microbank financial inclusion innovation, the WISALA, or the Widows Savings and Loan Association, continues to disrupt the microfinance industry. So much so, in fact, that we were awarded Acquisition International's Innovation Excellence in Financial Inclusion Award earlier this year, our second global award for our bank. Our microbanks have been an incontrovertible success, and from a humble pilot of 3 banks in Tanzania only 3 years ago, Global Fund for Widows will end the year having established 117 microbanks around the world. Over 21,000 widows have been forever economically empowered by our programs, and it's especially comforting knowing that 55,000 of their children have been given the opportunity to return to school, be saved of child marriage and extremist recruitment, and be spared from the risk of being surrendered to human traffickers. Widows who started their banks with initial capital of $2,500 are ending the year with $5,000 to their name. With excess bank capital, widows are turning to their communities and opening computer centers, laundromats, rice farms, chicken farms, and even a school. We're working now to digitize their banking operations and helping them to establish credit scores and on-ramping them back to their rightful and dignified place in the formal sector. And with the wild success of our WISALAs, an additional 20,000 widows have placed themselves on our WISALA waitlist, with more joining quite literally every day. COVID has not deterred us from our continued high-level advocacy efforts as well. As we speak, the widowhood resolution is currently being negotiated on the floor of the General Assembly. We are grateful to Sierra Leone for having accepted our draft resolution in March and introducing it to the United Nations General Assembly. We are grateful also to the overwhelming support offered by the 70 countries at the United Nations with whom we met with this summer to discuss the human rights violations perpetrated against widows and the tragic impact on the world's efforts to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. We also celebrate the bold and resolute measure of His Excellency Ambassador Abdou Abari, permanent representative of the Mission of Niger to the United Nations, whom we honor today for being the first president in the history of the UN Security Council to bring the testimony of widows of conflict and post-conflict to the chambers of the Council. And for me personally, it will be the privilege of a lifetime to address the Security Council on an issue that has remained invisible for far too long. Corporations are also beginning to understand the deep interlinkages of widowhood to their target markets. World-leading pharmaceutical Novartis is one such visionary. Led by the indefatigable Racy Muchilwa, head of Novartis Sub-Sahara Africa and MENA, they are committing to meaningful economic and health programming for African widows. And financial titans such as HSBC are joining hands with us to fund microbanks and draw marginalized widows in Egypt to become valuable members of the economy. And it is nothing short of the greatest honor of my life, and certainly that of the Global Fund for Widows, to receive favor with First Lady Graça Machel, First Lady of Mozambique and South Africa, founder of the Graça Machel Trust, and widow to the late and beloved President Nelson Mandela, as we honor her commitment to the financial inclusion and economic empowerment of women in Africa. There is so much work ahead, but tonight I wish to thank our generous sponsors and donors for making all of these milestones possible. Widows that you will hear directly from tonight also extend their enduring gratitude. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank our dedicated and extraordinary team here at the Global Fund for Widows, as well as our indefatigable implementing partners around the world who sacrifice so much, even risking their lives daily, in order to serve our widows. And now, please join me in celebrating our distinguished honorees for the trailblazing work with widows. Kinnery.
Thank you, Heather. I thought I had seen challenges, but I didn't realize until I met Global Fund for Widows the extent to which widows suffer, not only from the loss of their partner, but the added layer of injustice that renders their life effectively over. Speaking of loss, it is not just COVID that is the widowmaker. Disease plays a role in taking those we love. While frontline workers and pharmaceuticals race to address the pandemic, Novartis made it their mission to prevent deaths and prevent widowhood by keeping Africa healthy. Their commitment to Africa means that men, women, and children receive the medications they need at little to no cost. Spearheading that noble endeavor is Ms. Racy Muchilwa, country president and head of Novartis Sub-Saharan Africa. Here this evening to present Ms. Muchilwa with the Global Fund for Widows Corporate Catalyst Award is His Excellency Ambassador Carlos dos Santos, Ambassador of the Republic of Mozambique to the United States. Voted Ambassador of the Year in the United Kingdom, His Excellency serves his country and Africa with unwavering commitment to developing peace, prosperity, and health. Ambassador dos Santos, we welcome you.
Good evening. My name is Carlos dos Santos. I have the privilege of serving as the Ambassador of Mozambique to the United States. In this capacity, I have had the distinct honor of interacting with global leaders and executives, such as those of this prestigious Global Fund for Widows and those being honored tonight. I had the opportunity to meet our next honoree recently, and I was impressed by the insights she provided on the depth and breadth of our work. As an African, it gives me great pleasure to realize that Novartis has indeed embarked upon a purpose-driven business model across Africa, as evidenced by the impact of their intervention in the 46 countries led by the honoree and her team. Her journey represents the duality of modern Africa, which always highlights family and community, while also striving to excel on the global stage, exemplifying excellence in Africa, and in this case, a young woman who is a leading global executive who, of course, happens to be African. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Ms. Rase Mushilwa, Country President and Head of Novartis Global Health, Sub-Saharan Africa. The COVID pandemic notwithstanding, Rase has led a business transformation to integrate three major divisions into one with a new strategic direction that focuses on patient reach beyond the traditional business metrics such as sales. Providing access to healthcare and high-quality medicines to the large underserved population of Sub-Saharan Africa has been top priority. As COVID-19 wielded an unprecedented challenge for patients and healthcare systems around the world, Novartis interventions on behalf of vulnerable communities such as widows in Kenya, where the Global Fund for Widows operates, caught our attention. In Ms. Mushilwa, and indeed my own interaction with the Global Fund for Widows, and informed by both our personal experiences in Africa, it is clear to us that the good health of our communities, our nations, and our continent is inextricably linked to sustaining our most marginalized, especially widows. In challenging times, it is reassuring to see a global multinational company deliver so profoundly at a community-based level. Please join me in welcoming and congratulating Novartis and our honoree Rase Mushilwa, a leading African executive and now the recipient of the Global Fund for Widows 2021 Corporate Catalyst Award.
Thank you, Global Fund for Widows, for honoring my team and I in Sub-Saharan Africa with this award, 2021 Corporate Catalyst Award, Africa and MENA. This is not just an award for me and the 600 plus employees in Sub-Saharan Africa, but it is also an award for the people whose lives we have been able to improve and extend. We are truly honored to have played a part. Novartis has a long-standing commitment in the continent, anchored on our purpose to improve and extend people's lives. The implications of widowhood have a direct impact on health, which can be understood in the context of the two key challenges that widows face in this region that I have been able to see firsthand. One is disinheritance, which means widows are unable to address their family basic needs, including the health and nutrition of their children. The other is harmful practices through cleansing and burial rites, which have been identified as a facilitator of diseases, including HIV and AIDS. You can count on our lasting commitment to continue addressing the varied healthcare needs of this continent. Once again, thank you, Global Fund for Widows, for the work you're doing to empower widows.
Thank you, Your Excellency, and thank you, Ms. Muchilwa, for the work that you are spearheading in Africa, particularly for women, children, and widows. Very few understand how access to healthcare and modern medicine can save and extend the lives of someone you love dearly. I know how difficult it is to live in a hospital for months on end, trying to hold on to a glimmer of hope. And let's give the widows who are counting on us some hope. $100 economically changes the life of one widow and her children forever. $500 allows 5 widows to start chicken farms in Malawi. $1,000 allows 10 widows to start a rice farm. You can support us tonight by texting WIDOWS21 to 76278 or clicking on our call for contributions on your screen or scanning the QR code. I'm always taken by the transformative impact of Global Fund for Widows programming. 3 years ago, we launched the Sarah Bank Project Tanzania. Those pilot 3 banks have now grown to 18 banks. Those same widows that 3 years ago had nothing are now wealthy cattle farmers and are running for office. In Tanzania, they insisted on telling the story to you themselves. So here they go.
Mimi naitwa Meshi Pius Singolia. Ninafanya kazi na shirika la International Collaboration for Science Education Tanzania. Lakini pia kwenye hili shirika tuna mradi huu ambao tunashirikiana na watu wa Wisala ambao unafadhiliwa na Fund for Widow. Kwa ni mradi ambao unafadhiliwa na mfuko wa kidunia unaowashika mkono wajane. Kwa tunayo furaha kubwa na sisi kuweza kupata hii fursa ya kuweza kuhudumia wajane wetu wa Tanzania, wajane wetu wa mkoa wa Arusha katika kuweza kujiinua kiuchumi.
Mimi hapa nilipo ni mjane. Nimeachwa mwaka 2009. Nimeachwa na watoto 5. Watoto wanasoma. Hawana chakula. Hata mahali hapa yenyewe ya kufaa mimi licha ya mtoto sipati.
Na mimi wanayo watoto 7. Wawili wamemaliza shule, nahangaika naye maana bana yangu amekufa muda mrefu. Hasa tu nania watoto wote akafariki.
Kwenye huu mradi wa Sara ambao unahudumia wajane, pamoja na kwamba tunawapa elimu ya ujasiriamali, lakini pia tunawapa mitaji. Na mtaji huu hatoki tu kumpa mwanamke hela ikaonekana kwamba mradi ndio umefanya. Ni mradi ambao unalenga kuweza kuleta ule umiliki na yeye pia ajione kwamba anamiliki ile biashara, anamiliki ule mradi. Kwenye mradi ambao wanafanya kwa hasa katika mradi ule wa pamoja ambao ni ufugaji au shughuli ambazo wameweza kuzichagua wenyewe. Kwanza ni mradi ambao wamama wenyewe wanauchagua. Wanakaa wanakubaliana kwamba sisi kama kikundi tumeona kwamba katika mazingira haya tuweze kufanya biashara hii. Na katika biashara ile nusu ya mtaji wa mradi ule wamama wale wanaochangia. Alafu ile nusu inayobaki ndo Sara anawasaidia kuweza kuhakikisha kwamba wanapata ule mtaji wa pamoja na kuweza kuanza ile biashara pamoja.
Tunajishughulisha na biashara 2 ya mradi wa pamoja ambao tulianza na mbuzi, tukadema hivyo baadaye tukawa tunafuga ng'ombe. Mwaka huu wa 2021 tumeanza kuwafuga ng'ombe.
Kwa tuendelee kuwashika mkono kwa sababu kwenye kuwashika mkono katika kwa upande wa uchumi ndio nguvu yao iko hapo. Ndio heshima yao iko hapo. Wanaweza kuwasaidia watoto na mambo mengine yakaenda.
Lakini nilipojiingiza katika kikundi cha Sara Benki, kwanza nimepata mafunzo ya kufanya biashara, niweze kupata hisa, niweze kupata hela ya kuwahudumia wanangu. Sasa hivi wanaishi vizuri, wanaosoma msingi wanasoma, wanaosoma sekondari wanasoma na wanakula vizuri na wanaishi sehemu nzuri.
Hiyo kipindi ya nyuma sisi hamna hiyo maendeleo ya shirika. Sisi nakufa na njaa. Sasa hivi naenda kwenye kikoba na nakopesha 500,000, nanunua mbuzi yangu 10, akakuja kusaa. Kwa hiyo shirika linasaidia sana na hiyo kikoba yetu. Kwa hiyo sasa hivi iko mzuri kweli.
Tumeweza kufanikiwa kwa sababu ni kitu ambacho kilikuwa hakipo, na sasa hivi wamama kwa ujasiri wanafunga hela zao viunoni, wanaenda sokoni kwa ujasiri, wanafanya kuchagua, wananunua, wanapeleka sehemu ambayo wamekubaliana, zinafugwa. Na zikiwa pale ni shughuli yao, ni jukumu la kwao kama wanawake kuhakikisha kwamba wanazifuatilia, wanazisimamia ziweze kuleta manufaa au ziweze kunufaisha kama kikundi. Mradi huu umeweza kubadilisha utamaduni wa jamii. Utamaduni huu ni yale mahusiano yaliyopo kati ya mwanamke na mwanamume. Tukienda kwa mfano kama mwanamke ni mtu ambaye nimechukuliwa kama ni mtu ambaye hawezi. Lakini mradi huu umekuja na matokeo tofauti baada ya kuwaunganisha wanaume wawe marafiki, waweze kuamini wanawake kwamba wanaweza kufanya wakipewa fursa.
Ora wanda sari anmasari tankaranodo na rolo ibebagaroni aribusain narianda sana kasi. Mimi ndiliriga na sha mewa gane bolondo monongone. Na nararangi na sumirangara ronjile. Na nasira rangi na herran kajijiki.
Tumeona uhitaji mkubwa kwa wanawake wengi ambao wanahangaika, ambao wanahitaji msaada wa kuweza kusaidiwa, kufunguliwa akili, kuweza kuelewa jinsi ya kuweza kusimama wenyewe, kuhudumia familia, lakini pia jinsi ya kuweza kufanya biashara ambazo zitawasaidia kuweza kupata kipato cha uhakika. Kwa hiyo uhitaji ni mkubwa sana. Tungetamani tumalize wilaya za Arusha, tungetamani zaidi tuweze kufikia Tanzania kwa ujumla. Lakini changamoto inakuwa ni rasilimali. Nimeona kwamba mwanamke akishikwa mkono ni mwanamke ambaye anaweza kuamka, akaweka bidii ya kazi na akanyanyuka, akatembea mwenyewe katika ujasiri ambayo ni ngumu hata mtu kuelezea.
I am inspired by these widows' resilience and their intrepid and entrepreneurial spirit. Their success in Tanzania has inspired an additional 6,250 widows who have placed themselves on the Sarah Bank waitlist. Your donation of $2,500 creates one bank for 25 of these enterprising women. Our next honoree also wants our microbanks to be introduced in his country to address the desperate need of conflict widows. Losing a husband is hard enough, but losing a husband as a victim of war is unimaginable. I had never considered that the chief victim of war are widows, but in working with Global Fund for Widows, I've learned that up to 80% of the female population in active war zones can be widows, and 50% in post-conflict contexts. Sadly, I wasn't alone in my omission, as the United Nations Security Council itself has never addressed the issue of widowhood in its 76-year history. Tonight, we wish to honor His Excellency, Ambassador Abdou Abari, permanent representative of the Mission of Niger to the United Nations and incoming president of the Security Council. Having witnessed the ravages of conflict in the Sahel, Ambassador Abari is no stranger to the suffering of conflict widows. And furthermore, he has taken the unprecedented decision to host the world's first ever ARIA Formula on Widowhood at the Security Council, bringing the voice of conflict and post-conflict widows to the chamber for the first time in history. For his intrepid vision, we wish to award Ambassador Abari with the Global Fund for Widows Diplomatic Achievement Award. And here to present His Excellency with the award is Shkipe Dermishi.
Thank you, Kinare. It is a privilege to join you this evening from Kosovo. My name is Shkipe Dermishi and I'm a widow of 4. In 1998, my husband was waiting at the traffic light together with his 2 friends when they were surrounded by Serbian police. They were murdered by them. He received 24 bullets to his body and no explanation for his murder. The police then made all kinds of obstacles not to give us his body. I was 24, our daughter was 3, and our son was only 2. As a young couple starting out, we were living with my in-laws. I continued to live there until one day the Serbian police collected us from our home and put us on the train with hundreds of others, destination unknown. We were on the train for hurrying 10 hours, not knowing what our fate held. I clutched my strangely calm my little children on my lap. My in-laws and my parents wept beside me. The multi-military checkpoints were the cries of other prisoners of war either being forced on or off the train, were the only break to the deafening silence. We were lucky. We ended up in the North Macedonia, where we lived like refugees for a few months. Then, the UN peacekeeping forces allowed us to return to what was left of our home, almost nothing. But I was lucky. I spoke English and I was able to get a job. I pursued my master's degrees while working full-time, often even overtime without pay. I educated my children, who are now architects and agroeconomists, and I supported my in-laws too. I played and continue to play the role of mother, father, nurse, teacher, and provider. And despite all of that, as widows, we remain invisible in the eyes of our country. Rarely do we ever inherit as both tradition and law make it often impossible to do so. So has been the fate of many. Unfortunately, after all hardship we had to through it, being able to inherit remains the exception to the norm. But we are not alone. Widows constitute the majority of female population in conflict and post-conflict regions of the world, And yet, we are not given dignity for the burdens we shoulder. We are not given reparation for our loss. We are not given a seat at the peacekeeping table. But one man is changing this. His name is Ambassador Abdou Abari, permanent representative of mission of Nigeria to the United Nations and incoming president of the Security Council. His Excellency, while working with Global Fund for Widows, realized that widows are the key to lasting peace and reconciliation. In historic move, Ambassador Abari arranged for the Security Council to receive testimony directly from the widows for the first time in the history. Ambassador Abari, on behalf of Global Fund for Widows and on behalf of millions of widows of conflict around the world, we thank you for your vision. It is my honor to share with you Global Fund for Widows Diplomatic Achievement Award.
Madame Hisa Leather, President of Global Fund for Widows, Honorable Graça Machel, and President of Novartis, Excellencies, colleagues, and distinguished guests, I extend to you all my warmest greetings. I am honored and humbled to receive this award alongside the most distinguished honorees, particularly Honorable Graça Machel and the President of Novartis. I thank Global Fund for Widows for such distinction, and I accept it on behalf of all the vulnerable widows, and particularly widows of Niger, who strive every day for a better future for themselves and for their children. The humanitarian and financial support that Global Fund for Widows provides to vulnerable widows makes them more autonomous, and it also gives them back their dignity. I am delighted to know that due to the partnership that we have developed with your organization and you, Madam President of Global Fund for Widows, vulnerable widows, women of Niger will also benefit from this financial support, which will allow them to create income-generating activities that will make them more autonomous. This comes in a critical time in our country and the Sahel region in general, as we are dealing with the horrific impact of insecurity, which has triggered so many deaths and has left many women without their husbands, the main breadwinners, and forcing them to become head of households without adequate means to feed their children and the extended families. Additionally, their children's education, which can offer hope for future, is jeopardized. We owe it to these brave women to ensure that they do not fall into deep poverty by implementing economic programs which financially empower them. It is equally important to provide the educational and training support needed so that these women and their children can thrive. I join the Global Fund for Widows and today's honorees to call for a global and sustained action in favor of widows globally. Thank you very much for your availability and for your financial support. Much appreciation also to your experts, Ms. Margie Kremlin and Mr. Brian McGinley, who have been working closely with our expert, Dr. Halima Hima and Professor Hassana Halidu. I thank them too for the very good collaboration they have cultivated with your team. I wish you success in all your endeavors. We remain available to provide any support needed to ensure that the project you will implement in Niger is executed successfully due to the high-quality interventions by Nigerian financial experts and the widows themselves. In closing, I express my profound gratitude to the Global Fund for Widows for its noble and global mission. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Ambassador Abari, for your commitment to widows. I am pleased to announce that with the proceeds raised from this evening, Global Fund for Widows will pilot 10 microbanks in Niger in 2022, empowering 250 widows and 750 of their children. Our life-changing economic empowerment programs would not be possible without your support, so thank you. Our goal this evening is to raise $100,000 to empower these women and their children. Your donation will help us address the 21,000 widows currently on our waitlist. And there are so many more. So please, we really encourage you to donate. On your screen, you will be able to make a donation by clicking on the donation button or texting WIDOW21 to 76278 or scanning the QR code. It only takes $100 to forever change the life of a widow. It is hard enough to lose one husband. Losing two is cruelty at its finest. Our chief guest of honor this evening is one who truly has the resilience of spirit, dignity, and resolve like no other. First Lady of Mozambique and South Africa, widow to the late and beloved President Nelson Mandela, human rights activist and staunch advocate of the financial inclusion of women, is the Honorable Gracia Machel. The Honorable First Lady has been working incessantly to create financial inclusion programs for African women, announcing several initiatives to increase market access and social development for Africa's most vulnerable. Sound familiar? For her unwavering advocacy and catalyzing programming, the Global Fund for Widows is honored to present Gracia Machel with the Financial Inclusion Award.
Thank you again, Kinnery. The Honorable First Lady Gracia Machel truly needs no introduction. Dedicated First Lady of Mozambique and South Africa, and human rights advocate in her own right, the First Lady is the survivor of not one beloved president, but two. It's no wonder that the world's greatest champion of racial equity and justice, President Nelson Mandela, chose Madame Machel to be his right hand in his advocacy of human rights. As his widow, Madame Machel continued to be the voice of Africa's most marginalized, women, and now widows. The First Lady has directed her laser focus to the financial inclusion of women on the continent, creating programming that ensures their unfettered access to capital and denouncing discriminatory laws and banking policies that structurally exclude them, while creating networks of programs that refine women's entrepreneurial skills and prepare them for banking in the formal sector. Her groundbreaking work serves as inspiration and validation for our work here at the Global Fund for Widows. Madam First Lady, we thank you for your courage, your resilience, and dedication to the dignified economic inclusion of women and widows in Africa. For your great vision, compassion, and unwavering dedication to widows, it is my greatest honor to present you with the Global Fund for Widows Financial Inclusion Award. Madam First Lady.
Good evening. Greetings to you all from my home in Mozambique. As I accepted this award tonight, I'd like to thank Heather Ibrahim Leathers, President and founder of the Global Fund for Widows, the Global Fund for Widows Board of Directors, and staff for this prestigious recognition. I humbly accepted this year's Financial Inclusion Award on behalf of all those who have worked side by side with me throughout the decades to raise the faces and voices of Africa's women and provide them a place of prominence on the global development agenda. It is an honor to be recognized by the Global Fund for Widows this evening. As a widow who knows the heart-wrenching pain of picking up the pieces to life after it has been shattered by the death of a husband, I join your ranks with compassion and solidarity. For millions of women across the globe, becoming a widow is a sorrowful end to life as we know it. But it is also a time when we courageously draw upon our reserves and inner strength to start writing a new chapter for ourselves and our families. We are called upon like never before, and amid the most painful of circumstances, to reinvent ourselves. We have no choice but to be creative and resilient. The Global Fund for Widows reminds us that we are not alone in our journey for self-discovery and self-reliance. You give meaning to this chapter and breathe life into its pages. I feel honored to accept this award as it is affirmation of the importance of collective contributions to this reinvention. I extend my gratitude to the Global Fund for Widows for the invaluable support you provide to women who find themselves navigating life without their beloved life partners. I'm proud of your innovative widow savings and loan associations. These microbanks and the financial platforms they offer are improving the lives of thousands of women and children across Africa and India. Your interventions are sorely needed as the shocking financial inclusion statistics paint a grim picture for countless women. In sub-Saharan Africa, before COVID, only 30% of women had a bank account, compared with 48% of men, a gap that has only widened with the devastating impacts of the pandemic. The figures are even worse in North Africa, where about 2/3 of the adult population remain unbanked, and the gender gap for access to finance is 18%, the largest in the world. I'm deeply appreciative of the recognition you have bestowed upon my Pan-African efforts through the Graça Machel Trust and my work to accelerate social transformation in Mozambique through my Foundation for Community Development. As you know, the Graça Machel Trust shares a common aim with the Global Fund for Widows to accelerate the socio-economic advancement of women. Over the past 10 years, my trust has been able to create and strengthen its Women in Finance network in a number of countries in Africa, as well as build and enhance existing business networks across the continent. We have also been developing the capacity of Africa's women entrepreneurs through our flagship enterprise program entitled Women Creating Wealth. I'm pleased to share with you this evening that over the past 3 years, the Graça Machel Trust has also been laying the groundwork for what we believe will be a transformative initiative, a Gender Lens Investment Fund that is created for African women by African women. It seeks to reshape the narrative of Africa as a role model that is successful in business, an equal opportunity employer, an impact investor, as well as a solution innovator capable of designing contextual products and services targeted at the African female entrepreneur. So I accept this award this evening with the gratitude and mindful of the magnitude of the work that still remains unfinished. I encourage the Global Fund for Widows, as you bear the prestigious title, alongside the significant responsibility of being the largest civil society organization working to advance the economic status of widows in the developing world, to continue innovating and expanding your financial inclusion offerings for women who needs it most. Thank you again for this wonderful recognition. I am with you in spirit in our collective work. The lives of millions of women, their children, and the entire communities depend on how ambitious we are in our financial inclusion efforts. So Let us be bolder and braver as we carry their hopes and dreams with us.
Madam First Lady, I don't know what it must have been like to lose two incredible husbands, but I do know what it was like to lose one. I became a widow on January 5th, 2018. It was the day before what would have been my husband's 30th birthday. And while I'll never forget that day as one of the hardest in my life didn't end that day. Sure, I had a broken heart. I was a single mother to a 14-month-old son, but I had the luxury to get back on my feet. My son was not taken from me. My home was not taken from me. I was educated. I had the ability to go back to work and pick up all of the broken pieces. Many of my fellow widowed sisters across the globe do not have their luxury. Their lives literally end the day that their husbands' lives end. Let's please help these brave women wear widowhood as a badge of honor instead of as a curse. Please help them get back on their feet, provide for their children, and know their legal rights, and prosper in both health and wealth. Our final guest of honor this evening is one widow who has endured unspeakable hardship, Dorcas Kumbara. Dorcas Kumbara was widowed 15 years ago, a young widow with two babies at her side. She was evicted from her home and cleansed through violent burial rites. Left with nothing and afraid of continued violence, Dorcas was forced to escape into the dangerous Kenyan bush. It was there that she built a meager shelter of driftwood and plastic bags. She survived for 15 years in the forest, foraging for food and somehow surviving animal attacks. Global Fund for Widows and its implementing partner, Come Together Widows and Orphans organization, came to learn of Dorcas' situation while building banks in a remote region of Kenya. Words cannot describe the tragedy of her situation when we found her deep in the forest. Less than 48 hours after we discovered Dorcas, we relocated her to a dignified home in her village. Her children were enrolled in a school, and Dorcas has started a chicken farm as a member of our Brookbank project and is eager to expand into the goat business. Dorcas, we salute you for your resilience, we salute your spirit, and we honor you tonight.
My name is Dorcas Kambura. I was married for quite a number of years and I had a good marriage. I used to live with my husband in a place called Miori and we used to live a good life. I had 3 children. Unfortunately, one child died. So my husband got an accident and he died, and this is how I remained as a widow. Unfortunately, I was not even allowed to go bury him. I was disinherited of everything, even the clothes off my back. I was made to endure violent cleansings. This is how I ended up living in the streets with my children. Actually, the cleansings continued for 15 years. Even my son, who was born when I was living on the streets, he's a blessing to me because I cannot curse my children. Eventually, my father gave me a small piece of land and he built me a small home. But this was unacceptable to my brothers because women are not allowed to own land. There started a land dispute between me and my brothers. It was a very big dispute until finally my little house that my father gave me was destroyed by my own blood brothers. This was so painful. As a widow, I was inherited by my in-laws and a second time by my own blood. I had nowhere to go. I was depressed and afraid and defeated, and so I escaped with my children into the bush and I built a shelter for us from wood and bags. and other things that I found. I can't describe how difficult my life was living in the bush. I don't know how I survived there for 15 years. Since I came and started living in the forest, one, it has been loneliness. Two, there has also been lots of snakes. One day, I was so shocked to see a car, yet no people come to visit me. I didn't know my life was going to change. I didn't know about existence of Global Fund for Widows. I heard it for the first time through their partner, Come Together Widows and Orphans Organization, founder Diana Kamande. My life has changed. It was my first time for the last 15 years to see somebody bringing some food for me. Thank you. I am now in a house. I'm not being rained on. My children can go to school. Their tuition fee is taken care of. Their school uniform taken care of. They can walk to school with shoes. Now, I believe I will be able to grow my chicken business, and I'll be able to buy some goats, and then later on I can have some cows. I only needed somebody to hold my hand and to tell me it is not over. I have a reason to smile. I am now a member of Global Fund for Widows Brookbank, and I am socially and economically empowered. This chick is known as Heather. This one is known as Diana. This one is known as Brooke. This one is known as Faiza. Thank you, Global Fund for Widows.
It only takes $100 to forever change the lives of these women, to empower them, to educate their children, to improve their health, and enable them to live a dignified, maybe even a happy life. I was lucky. Because of your generous support, Dorcas is lucky too. On behalf of the board of directors of the Global Fund for Widows, and on behalf of the 300 million widows and my sisters that we serve, we thank you. Good night and be well.